Hello everybody, I am Carrie and welcome to day 2 of my 30-day trans challenge as we count down to my bottom surgery in Thailand. Alright, forgive me in advance for not being as perky as yesterday. I just got back from work, so I'm pretty tired, and I was up late editing yesterday's video. Anyway, question 2. How did you choose your name, and what names were you considering using, and why? Alright, so yesterday I talked about how I realized that I was trans, and specifically how it kind of came in at age 13, 14. So at the time, I started writing transgender fiction, which basically was just stories where I would find some way to write from the perspective of a male character who was changed into a female character. Usually through that character's own wishes. It was kind of basically that character doing what I felt like I couldn't because I felt like I was trapped in my body and transition was impossible again. So that is how I started thinking up alternate names for myself. The fiction that I write is pretty blatantly Mary Sue fiction. So basically, like, every single story that I wrote starred me with my actual real name, and I completely didn't mask the fact that it was just wish fulfillment, because, again, that was just my manner of self-expression. You know, when you cannot express your internal sense of gender identity, you do it in any way you can. For me, that was through my writing, because when I wrote about what it felt like to be the opposite sex, and when I wrote about a character being able to, for those few precious hours at a time, it felt, I kind of almost by proxy got to feel like what I wanted to be, and to be able to express it. So it was through that writing that, because I was using me and my dead name, which I'll go ahead and say my dead name was Charlie, or Charles, which was the legal name, but I always went by my nickname. I absolutely refused to use my full name because it just sounded so adult and guyish, where, you know, like the cute diminutive nickname ending in IE sounded a little bit less harsh and adult and masculine. So essentially in these stories, the character would always be changed from that default starting state of Charlie into a female character. So that was when I started thinking up alternate names for myself that were like a female version. So the very first story that I wrote like this, basically what I did is that I set up this world where children got to choose their own gender at age 12. So basically, the story was that children were born in a genderless state. And they, were born with no genitals at all, no secondary sexual characteristics, no defining features at all. And they were given gender-neutral names at birth. And then it wasn't until age 12 that they actually got to start experimenting with what gender they wanted to become for the rest of their lives. And it was completely up to them. They could change back and forth as many times as they wanted until they'd settled on which gender they permanently wanted to be. So that was the theory behind that story. So I gave everyone in that story a gender-neutral name to start with. So in this case, the gender-neutral name was Charle, Sharle. And then the two names that kid, and basically it was every child chooses their name after being given a gender-neutral birth name that is a combination of the two sexes' names. So again, the name that I came up with first was Charle and Charlie. And those two, Charle was the gender-neutral name, and it was Charlie and Cheryl that were the two that were chosen between. So Cheryl was the first female version of my name that I ever heard. But I kind of realized immediately after that first story, I didn't really like that name. To me, it sounded very adult. Like, Cheryl sounds like a 50, 60-year-old woman to me. it sounds like more of a 60s kind of name. So, I kept experimenting with different names that I wanted to call my characters, and then all of a sudden the name Carrie came to me as one of the alternatives. And it clicked. And I was like, yes, that is a great name. It sounds young, it sounds pretty, and it's like almost identical to the male version of my name, minus a few consonants. So I started using that in my stories almost exclusively, and it stuck. And I just kept using it and kept using it and kept using it. And so when I started transition, there was pretty much no other name that I even considered. My name was going to be Carrie. But because that name became so ubiquitous with me, and now I had to say, I used that name as the female version of myself to the point where it was almost like, see, I think this happens with a lot of trans people. It's almost like a lot of us kind of develop multiple personalities because we cannot express our feminine gender identity. And so I think a lot of us, and this is quite common, will create this alternate hypothetical female version of ourselves that sometimes we can say, okay, well, I'm going to act like Carrie today. And, this is what Carrie would do, and things like that. So, because that name became so ubiquitous with me, I started looking up the meaning of it, and I started looking up what names it was related to. And so, I started looking up what the abbreviations for Carrie were. And the one that really got me was Carolyn, because that actually is the feminine version of the name Charles in, I think, French, where Charles means manly and Carolyn means feminine or womanly. And so it's just, a perfect back and forth balance. So when I finally did start hormones and started transition, it was either Carrie or Carolyn. And I knew I was going to go by Carrie either way, so that wasn't the debate. But the question was, legally, did I want to be Carrie or did I want to be Carolyn? And so I decided to ask my mom. And, okay, I guess I do have a quick other story. My dad and my mom told me that had I been born assigned female, my name would have been Sarah Elizabeth, because my parental grandmother was named Sarah and my maternal grandmother was named Elizabeth. My mom wanted to name me Elizabeth because her mother had passed away only about 2 months before I was born. And my mom said that when I was born, she just freaked out because I had my grandmother's eyes. Exactly. The hazel color. And so, mom had wanted, if I was born assigned female, to call me Elizabeth. But dad wanted his mother's name, so Elizabeth Sarah and my last name didn't quite sound right, so they switched them and it was Sarah Elizabeth. However, obviously I was not born female assigned at birth, so that name kind of fell by the wayside. I did slightly consider that, though, because I said, well, you know what? For years, in order to, again, express my hypothetical feminine gender identity, I started saying, all right, well, if I can't be Carrie, then maybe that will be a name that I name my hypothetical future daughters. And obviously that ended up not happening. So there was a time where I kind of juggled back and forth between me being Carrie or taking the name Sarah and, again, giving my hypothetical future daughters the name Carrie or Kristen, which are the characters in my story that I used most commonly. And also became the protagonist of my fantasy novel, The Eridan Prodigy, that at one point was going to be my life's work, but I kind of abandoned it. But finally, I said, you know what, I'm just going to go with Carrie. And so I asked my mom. I gave her the choice because she was the most interested in making the choice with me. I said, Mom, I need your expert opinion. I am trying to decide between having the name Carrie and the name Carolyn. Which one do you think sounds better? And although I did not take the name Sarah, I did keep the middle name. Because again, I was going to be, even though my name was going to be Sarah Elizabeth if I was born female, Mom said she was going to call me Liz. So, that was basically how I got my middle name. So there we go. That was my official name, Carolyn Elizabeth. Again, I'm not going to say my last name, but that is my story of how I found my name. And it's so weird now that I've been using it for over 2 years. I don't even resonate with my birth name at all. You know, it's like, I never even realized this, but I really didn't like my birth name at all. You know, it's kind of something that I tolerated, and I said, well, I guess this is my name. Where I love the name Carolyn and going by Carrie. Like that name, Carolyn Elizabeth. It just feels right. So anyway, that's my story. That is how I picked my name, and the alternate names that I was thinking of. Again, the only ones I was thinking of were Sarah and at one point Cheryl, but that name just did not fit me at all. So pretty much it was Carrie from the beginning, and eventually I did legally go with Carolyn Elizabeth. All right, I'll be back tomorrow with day 3. Thanks for watching, everybody. Have a good night.